LEVAN Saginashvili very well may have reached the highest level the sport of arm wrestling has ever seen. He has yet to lose a single match in his professional career, and until very recently, he had not even lost a single round. LEVAN was the very clear #1 rank for years, and it wasn't even close. No one can take anything away from what he has accomplished. LEVAN is an absolute beast. However, it is my opinion that Hermes Gasparini is likely the #1 arm wrestler on the planet. This video will cover the reasons I don't think LEVAN should be solely considered #1 in the world at the moment, with all due respect intended. If we take a look at the current global rankings, LEVAN is still ranked #1 as of July 30, 2023. And this does make total sense initially. LEVAN is still undefeated, of course he's #1. And I would normally agree with that, but I think LEVAN's case is a bit unique. The most important thing to understand about this situation is that LEVAN is not inactive due to lack of match opportunity. LEVAN is inactive due to injury. As most of you know, LEVAN had a pretty serious injury to his wrist a while back. He was wrist curling some heavy weight and he popped something in his forearm. Now, a popping or cracking noise doesn't necessarily indicate an injury, but in LEVAN's case, he was forced to pull out of his match with Artem Morozov, so it clearly was pretty serious. And a couple weeks ago, LEVAN put out a video showing us some of his rehab process. This video does confirm that LEVAN's wrist flexor tendon was the thing that was injured. Your wrist flexor tendon is what allows you to bend your wrist in an arm wrestling match and is crucial for LEVAN's style. And judging by LEVAN's expression in this video, it looks like he is in quite a bit of pain right now. And even more recently, in an interview with LEVAN, he was asked how his recovery was going as well as when he plans to return to the sport.
How is your wrist recovering? Is it going well?
It is going not so fast, I hope. I hope in next year I can push March, April.
Okay, of 2024, you'll be back on the table. Back on the table practicing or in competition? Competition.
I don't want to.
He doesn't want to rush.
So it doesn't sound like LEVAN is very close to being back at 100%. And he also says he hopes he can have a match in April of 2024. And this brings us to the inactivity rule. For quite some time in arm wrestling, the general rule of thumb has simply been 1 year. If an arm wrestler is inactive for over 1 year, they are removed from the rankings. And I think this rule is okay depending on the way it is applied. But I also think there are problems with using it in this particular situation. First of all, at this point in the timeline of professional arm wrestling, there are world-level pay-per-view events every single month or even multiple times per month. So there is a much greater opportunity to get a match anytime you want one. I also think that the purpose of this inactivity rule is more so for people trying to dodge matches. And LEVAN certainly was not dodging matches as he had already agreed to pull Morozov, but as stated earlier, he got injured. To me, not competing due to injury is different than not competing due to dodging matches. For example, if the #1 ranked puller broke his arm, would he still be considered #1 for the entire year? That seems a little bit off to me since it would not even be possible for him to defeat anyone. Obviously, LEVAN's injury is not as serious as an arm break, but it's serious enough that he cannot compete until April of 2024. And this date is important because LEVAN's latest match was February of 2023. If LEVAN does not compete until April of 2024, he will have been inactive for over a year. And I think the fact that LEVAN has already given us a time frame that confirms this is significant. And this brings us to the point of Hermes Gasparini. A lot of people think that the match between Hermes and LEVAN really was pretty close. The final score of 4-2 would seem to indicate this. Hermes likely has a good chance to defeat LEVAN in a rematch if we compare the rate at which both athletes are improving. Hermes has way more potential to get bigger than LEVAN does, who is already pretty maxed out and if anything is dropping weight. It doesn't really seem fair to Hermes if no matter how well he does over the next year, he has no shot at improving his rank. He will be stuck at number 2 in the world regardless of how many matches he wins. And this doesn't only affect Hermes, but it also affects the sport as a whole, a situation in which the best matches we will see over the next year will only be for the number 2 rank is a major hype killer. Just the idea of fighting for the number 1 spot in the world is very important from a marketing perspective. It would be very unfortunate if this kind of match cannot take place until April of 2024. I think labeling Hermes as the number 1 rank puller in the world as of today in some shape or form is the best option. However, I want to clear something up, because you could also make the point that this is completely unfair to LEVAN, and I would agree with you. Stripping LEVAN of his title in a fashion that has never been done before is probably singling LEVAN out, and that is not my intention whatsoever. I'm a genuine fan of LEVAN and am very impressed by what he's accomplished. My intention is to find a compromise that works from all angles. Option number 1 would be to simply say that LEVAN and Hermes are tied for the number 1 rank in the world. I think this is somewhat fair to both pullers. It doesn't strip LEVAN of his title, but it also doesn't lock Hermes into a number 2 rank. It also is much better for the overall hype of the sport. Another option would be to say that LEVAN's rank is simply on pause while he is injured, and Hermes is the interim champion. And of course, with this option, LEVAN's first match back to the sport is automatically for the number 1 rank. LEVAN does not have to climb any ladders or anything of the sort. Another option would be to say that LEVAN is the champion of King of the Table and Hermes is the champion of East versus West. This option could also work from multiple perspectives. We could technically say that they are both number 1 in the world because these are different leagues with different rule sets and different tables. Therefore, they are not comparable. This option is probably the least controversial and seems to be the one that a lot of people are going with. It certainly does not insult LEVAN's legacy, but it also doesn't lock Hermes down at number 2. And finally, we could say that LEVAN is injured and has already confirmed his inactivity for over a year, so Hermes is number 1 and LEVAN is just off the rankings entirely. But I personally do not like this option. I do think it's totally unfair to LEVAN because we are making up rules as we go if we were to choose this option. It also feels very targeted against specifically LEVAN and no one else. My personal favorite option out of all of these is to separate the leagues. I think this is the least controversial option out of them all and it accomplishes everything we need it to. But I do think that we can go ahead and refer to Hermes as the number 1 rank in the world, understanding that he is only the number 1 arm wrestler in the East vs West League with East vs West rules and tables. LEVAN is also the number 1 rank arm wrestler, but only under King of the Table rules and tables. But let me know what you guys think about this, because it is a very controversial subject. Do you guys agree with one of the options I listed above, or hopefully you have a better idea that I didn't mention? Regardless, both Hermes and LEVAN are absolute units and they deserve all the credit in the world for what they've accomplished. I'm excited for the second half of 2023 and I can't wait until LEVAN is back in action and we don't have to worry about this at all.